Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series, which is a video series that I started to do my best to explain everything I can about how a single photo of mine was taken. In today's video, I'm going to go over this image on the screen here of Sam that I took at a photo shoot that my friend Joe invited me to. So I want to say big thanks to Joe for the invite and Sam for being such a great model. It's been a while, I think over a year now, that I've done a Building the Shot video over a photo that I took at night. So I'm going to do my best to explain everything that differed from shooting a photo during the day. Before I continue, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people alike. With Skillshare, you can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. All of the classes on Skillshare are designed for real life and all of the circumstances that come with it. These lessons can help you stay inspired to express yourself and introduce you to a community of millions. There's honestly way too much on Skillshare for me to describe all of the classes to you, so you definitely need to just hop on and see all the classes that they offer. There's stuff on photography, cinematography, web design, productivity, so much, so just check it out. The class that I'm currently checking out is called Portrait Photography, Shoot and Edit Instagram-Worthy Shots by Jessica Kobasi. The reason why I wanted to check her class out is because she's a master at natural light photography, and that's something that I feel that I could definitely benefit from checking out her class so I can get better at that and give you guys more to offer in these videos. Skillshare was made to learn, so there's never any ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow where your creativity takes you. At less than $10 a month for an annual subscription, it's not that expensive at all. If you guys are really interested in trying it out, you can actually use my link in the description area below, because the first 1,000 of you to use that link will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. When you guys support the people that support me, it allows me to keep making free content. So if you're interested, please check out Skillshare. Okay, so back to the topic at hand, how I took this photo on the screen here of Sam at a night photo shoot. Of course, the main difference between this shot and any other shot that I've taken during the day is how much ambient there is in the shot. So typically during the day, if you want to lower down the ambient, because of course it's very bright outside during the day, and if you want to lower that ambient, there's three ways you can do that. You can either use a lower ISO, you can either use a fast shutter speed, or you can just stop down the aperture. However, during the night, you need to do the exact opposite to raise that ambient. During the day, you have a lot of ambient and you need to darken it. And during the night, you have very little ambient and you need to raise it. So the ways that you can raise the ambient is by raising the ISO, slowing down the shutter speed, or widening the aperture if you're stopped down a bit. Another crucial difference for this photo shoot as opposed to photo shoots during the day is that the light sources that I use were much weaker than the typical flashes that I use. So a flash between 300 watts to 600 watts is usually what you want to use during bright sunlight, but I did the exact opposite. I didn't even use flash for this photo shoot. I instead used the modeling lamps on my strobes. So that just means like a continuous LED source that's attached to the strobe that I was using. Any continuous light source out there is going to be much weaker than any sort of flash, even on the weakest output. Some of the main benefits of using a modeling lamp is that you can see exactly how the light's going to look before you even take a shot, and also you get more of the color of the eye, because when you see at night, your eyes dilate so that you can see better through the night, and that means less color in the eye. So when I take a photo at night with just a flash, their eyes are going to be dilated and then you see more of the black. But with the modeling lamp, since you're actually putting the light on the subject, it's going to go ahead and allow you to see more of the color. I also want to talk about the camera and the lens that I've used, because it's actually really important. The camera is not so important. I could have used any full frame camera out there, but I did use the Sony a7R III, and that was helpful in terms of the autofocus being good and allowing to focus in good low light. But again, I could have used any full frame camera out there because I was shooting at ISO 100. Any older cameras, I know if you past ISO 100, it starts to get grainy, but of course, since I was at ISO 100, again, I could have used any full frame camera. Although when it comes to the lens, that actually was super important for how this photo was created, because it allowed me to use a wide aperture of f1.2. The lens that I used was the Sigma Art 35 f1.2 lens. It's this one right here. It's my favorite lens to date. Previous to this lens, I was using the Sigma Art 105 1.4, which is good for blurring the heck out of the background, but I really like this lens for showing more of the environment around at the photo shoot. The wide aperture of f1.2 allowed me to grab a lot of ambient into the image. And like I mentioned before, the point of shooting at night is to bring up some of the ambient around the subject rather than bringing it down during the day. And using f1.2 allowed me to bring a lot of light into the scene. If I didn't have that aperture of f1.2 and instead had something like f3.5, which is on this kit lens right here, that's actually 3 stops darker than f1.2. So having your image 3 stops darker, I would have to either raise that ISO a bit or slow down that shutter a bit and risk having motion blur. So having that f1.2 allowed me to grab a lot of the ambient in the shots and also allowed me to get a nice blurry background, because of course having a step down aperture of f3.5 with this one would allow a lot more to be in focus and allow it wouldn't give me the image that I was aiming for, which is focusing just on Sam. And the lights that I used for this photo shoot actually were the Godox AD400 Pro and the Godox AD600 Pro. The 400 Pro has 30 watts available and the 600 Pro has 38 watts available. So you'll actually see in the photo shoot that I did, this photo shoot with Sam, that I actually used the 400 Pro as the main light and the 600 Pro as the rim light. The reason behind using the Godox AD400 Pro as the main light and the 600 Pro as the rim light was because I knew that the main light was going to be much closer to the subject and that would use its power more efficiently. And I knew that the rim light is going to be typically out of the frame of the shot further away. So I knew that I could benefit from having the extra power on the 600 Pro to travel the further distance and still hit the subject the way that I want it. The very last thing I want to talk about in terms of lighting is the Godox LC500R, which is their RGB wand. This is something that I used during the photo shoot. You can actually see in the behind the scenes footage that my friend Joe is actually using it to light the surrounding area around Samantha. So this was actually really important because it actually allowed me to get some color in the background rather than just being plain and dark and have no life. This color really added a lot of flavor to the photo shoot, so I'm really glad I was able to use this to provide a more interesting image. Alright, so here are the first shots that I wanted to show you. Of course, I did take some before, but this is the first shot that I took next to that bench, which is where I ended up being for that final shot of Sam. In this shot here, I wanted to initially go for a very dark, dramatic look, and I ended up not really liking that at all. I felt like it was very dark. So I ended up asking Joe, who was positioning the light, to move it more in front of me. So that ended up in this next shot here. I still felt like it was very dramatic in this shot, so I ended up moving it more in front of me, and it ended up with this nice lighting. And throughout this whole first 3 shots, the main thing that I'm focusing on is the lighting. When it comes to taking my portraits, I kind of have a mental checklist going on, and that order can change depending on the shot. But in this specific shot, what I wanted to nail down first was the lighting, and I felt that I did that in this photo. Obviously, she's blinking, and you can see that the rim light is showing up on the right there, but I nailed down the lighting on her the way I wanted it, so then that allowed me to focus on the next thing, which was going to be the composition. So obviously she is blinking in this shot, so again, ignore that, but I want to focus on the composition in this shot compared to the next shot. In this shot, what I felt like was that the lights that were going on in the background, I felt like they were a little too far away from her head, because I felt like in this shot here, there was a lot of negative space going on, all of the dark sky, and I wanted to kind of fill it in as much as I can somehow. I wasn't exactly sure how I would do that. But in this next shot, I moved and I shifted a little bit further away because I felt like I was too close to her in this shot. And then I shifted a little bit to the left there intentionally because I was able to grab these lights behind her kind of to frame her hair. So I felt like it filled in that gap of, just dark space between her and the lights in that last shot here. So again, I got further away. I framed her a little bit better with the lights around her. I got a little bit more of an interesting wall on the left there, but I also grabbed a little bit of the car right behind her. I didn't initially see that in this shot, so I did see it in the next shot, but between in this shot and the very next shot, again, like I mentioned before, I felt like there was a lot of dark space going on in that shot. So in this photo here, I'm at a little bit of a low angle, and if I go at a little bit of a higher angle, I kind of move those lights a little bit more to the top of it. So you can actually see in this shot here that I did do that. I raised them a little bit closer to the top because again, I felt like it was just a little bit too dark in the sky. But again, when I took this shot, obviously she's blinking again, so don't focus on that. All I'm doing right now at this point when I'm taking these shots is focusing on the composition. So in this shot, that's when I realized that the car was showing up behind her and then I needed to hide it with her body. So although I did like the framing of the lights next to her hair in this photo, I decided to shift back to the right side, which resulted in this photo. And I actually got really lucky with this shot because those lights behind her on camera right, they were actually shifting colors to like blues and yellows and different things. And I got lucky that it had nice reds going on in the photo. So if I really liked this shot, then I wouldn't have to do any editing in terms of color. It was already nice red. When it comes to this shot, again, you don't see the car, so I was happy about that. There is still the gap between her hair and the lights, but again, I was like, you know, the car or the gap between the hair. So then I was happy with the fact that the car wasn't going to be showing up in this shot, so I kind of settled for that. And then what I saw in this photo was, again, I was still seeing a lot of the dark space around her. So then after I took this shot, I realized, oh, there's a street lamp going on in above, you know, right above her head. So maybe if I get a lower angle, it could fill in that dark space in the sky. So I ended up doing that. I got at a lower angle and I took this shot here. And although those red lights are now blue in the background, I thought, okay, it's not that much of an edit to change the color. So if I really like this photo compared to the other one, I can just change those lights to be red. And again, the main reason for shifting down in this shot here was to fill in the sky more with that street lamp. So you do also see the rim light there going on in the shot, but it's close enough to the frame where I can easily edit it out. And I was happy with this shot. So then I moved to something, you know, a different type of shot. I actually did have an idea on Pinterest for poses. And I'll throw on the screen right now the shot that inspired the next photo that I'm about to show you guys. So here is that pose there. It's not in any way exactly the same pose, but it was something that inspired me to grab this next pose. So here's the next shot of Sam. And you can see that, again, this is kind of close to that final shot that I wanted to show you, but I felt like I was a little too further away. The car is showing up a little bit in the photo, and I felt like I can get a lot more closer and get a little bit more of an intimate shot. So in the next shot, this one here, which is the final shot, it actually is a lot closer, and I like a lot more things going on in this photo, but you can actually see the car is still going on in there, and you can also see that there's a guy right there next to that pink wall in the background. But everything else, it kind of hit my checklist of her expression, the lighting, and other different things. So I was actually really happy with the mood more than anything of this shot. So I didn't really mind all that stuff that I was talking about before with all the negative space going on and different other things. I was happy with the mood more than anything, and that allowed me to kind of decide, oh wait, this is going to be the final shot that I'm going to be working with. I almost forgot to mention that you can actually start to see now that I have the Godox LC500R there going on and adding a little bit of color to the floor there. And that actually did help a lot because it actually added a little bit of rim light to her hair and her clothing and just added an extra layer of depth to the shot. All right, so what you're seeing right now on the screen is the straight out of camera shot of this photo. There's no editing applied whatsoever. And when it comes to my Lightroom edits, I do have a bit of a fluctuating order in terms of how I feel about the image, but I do want to break down the Lightroom edit and then show you guys the heavier edit in Photoshop. But when it comes to the Lightroom edit, the first thing that I was seeing that I wanted to adjust was the tint of the photo. I felt like there was a little bit too much greens going on, so I adjusted the tint to be a little bit more on the magenta side. So that ended up being from this photo here, you can actually see it more in the skin tones. So from this shot to this next shot here, I adjusted the magentas to be a little bit more. I think I've added a little bit like 8 on it. And the very next thing that I decided to change was I felt like there's a little bit too much darkness in the shadow area. So I raised the shadows just a little bit, which resulted in this photo here. And immediately after this, I thought, okay, I'm really happy with the exposure and the tint and the temperature. So let me go ahead and just raise the heck out of those colors because I love raising the saturation of the colors in my photos. So I decided to do that in this photo here. But of course, whenever I do that in Lightroom, one of the things that always happens is I raise the saturation of the blues a little bit too much and the oranges a little bit too much. But typically, the oranges is a thing that I only adjust because usually during the day, with the blues being a little bit saturated, it has a nice rich sky, and I don't mind that at all. But when it comes to the skin tones, that's when it starts to get something a little bit too odd. The saturation of the oranges in her skin is just way too strong. So I decided to target those specific oranges and lower them, which resulted in this next shot here. And immediately after that, I thought, okay, I'm really happy with this shot. Let me go ahead and just selectively adjust the image. So I used the selective brush tool in Lightroom to raise not just the saturation just a little bit, but also the exposure of her eyes. So just focus on her eyes right now. and you can see that they show up a little bit more. And then I do want her to be a little bit more, you know, popping from the shot. So I just added a little bit of selective exposure bump on her only, which resulted in this shot here. And after I got to this result, I was really happy with it and decided to move into Photoshop, which is what I'm gonna show you guys right now. So now let's go ahead and show you guys how I edited this photo of Sam. I am gonna kind of go through it a little quickly because I think this video is already too long. But the first thing I always do is remove distractions. So you guys can see it's quite a lot going on in this shot in terms of distractions. Just so much going on in this shot in terms of distractions I had to remove using the clone snap tool, different things. So that's the first thing I did. Second thing I did was dodge and burn. You guys can see the difference between here's the before and then here's the after. Before and the after. One of the things that sticks out a lot to me when I see that before and after is I did add a lot of brightness to the background behind her. Again, I felt like the image was too dark, so I did raise the exposure just selectively a little bit in terms of different areas, like I think a little bit above the sky around here and over here in the background. So that's going on there. And then I added a little bit of frequency separation to her legs so you guys can see the before, and then here's the after. Before and the after. The very next thing I did was add a little bit more red to the floors. So you guys can see that going on over here. Then I went ahead and desaturated some of those colors going on in the background there. I felt like they're a little too strong. So here's the before and here's the after on that. Then I added more red to the shot, which you guys can see here, before and after. I used the selective color tool to just go ahead and target the shot and then remove it in certain areas using the masking tool. Then I added a little bit more reds to the background here. I also added a little bit more of a cooler temperature throughout the image. From here, it's a little bit too warm in terms of the skin tone and a little bit in the background. So I added a little bit more cool temperature to the image, which resulted in this. It's kind of a subtle difference, but there is a difference. Another thing that I was seeing was the back leg here was not the same color as the leg that's right next to it. So I wanted to match it. So I sampled some of the color right there on the leg and added it to that side, and I just masked around it. So you guys can see that right there, the leg before and after. Then I also wanted to add a little bit more of a brighter catch light in her left eye. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit now. You can definitely still see the catch light going on right there, but I felt like it wasn't showing up so much. So I wanted to just make it more visible. So I copied this right catch light, added it to there, and then you can see the difference between before and after. Very subtle difference, but it's one that I definitely saw, so I wanted to make a change in that. I again decided to alter the colors one more time, so you guys can see that here, specifically a little bit in this top area of the building, and then a little bit right there in the background. So here's the before and here's the after. Then I decided to remove that leaf there because it was really bugging me. I thought it wasn't gonna bug me so much, but it was. So I decided to remove it. I added a slight shift in the reds to her legs. So that's what's going on in this layer here. I also removed a little bit more distractions going on, which is the shot here, before and after. And then I just made it a little bit brighter, a little bit more vibrant in terms of color, and then liquefied the shot to make it like this, because the camera does add 10 pounds. So always try to slim down the model just a little bit if it's showing up like they're a little bit bulky because of the clothing or different things like that. But after that, the image is finally edited and I just resized it down for Photoshop, and then I was done. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long. I hope you learned from it, and I'll see you guys in the very next video. Take care.